I thought I had the perfect marriage until I found out he cheated. I never thought this would be my reality. I always prided myself on having a stable, happy marriage. My husband and I met in college, and from the moment we started dating, everything felt right. We shared everything, our hopes, our fears, our dreams. We were that couple. The couple that others envied, the one that always seemed to be on the same wavelength. We were in love, or so I thought. But then everything came crashing down one night, one simple, quiet night that I'll never forget. It all started when I noticed something strange. It wasn't big at first. He'd come home later than usual from work a few times, but he had always been a hard worker. But then I started noticing other small things. He wasn't as affectionate as before. There was a distance that had begun to grow between us, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. At first, I chalked it up to stress, work, family obligations, the usual. He seemed distracted, always on his phone, and whenever I would walk into a room, he'd quickly hide it or put it face down. That was odd, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Then one evening, I came home early from a dinner with friends. I had forgotten my purse, so I had to go back to the house. I wasn't expecting anyone to be home. But when I walked in, I heard a strange noise, laughter. And then, the unmistakable sound of footsteps moving quickly. My heart started to race. I tried to calm myself down, thinking it could just be the TV or something. But when I walked into the living room, the sight before me froze me in my tracks. There, sitting on the couch, was my husband. And on his lap was another woman. I couldn't breathe. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, the words stuck in my throat. I wanted to scream, to confront them, but my legs wouldn't move. My mind was racing, and my heart was breaking. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The woman quickly stood up, her eyes wide with shock. My husband scrambled to his feet, his face pale. There was a brief silence before he finally spoke. "I can explain," he said, his voice shaking. But I didn't wait for an explanation. I turned around and left the house without saying a word. I don't know how I made it to my car, but I remember feeling numb. I drove to my best friend's house, not even thinking about the consequences, just needing someone to talk to. When she answered the door, she could see the devastation on my face. I remember blurting out, "He's been cheating on me. I saw him with another woman. I can't believe this is happening." She didn't know what to say at first. She just hugged me tight. And for the first time in a long time, I cried. I cried like I hadn't in years, sobbed until I had no tears left. The next few days were a blur. I barely ate or slept. I couldn't bring myself to talk to him, and he didn't reach out to me either, not at first. It was as though he was giving me the space I needed, but it felt more like he was avoiding me, like he didn't want to face the mess he'd created. The anger set in a few hours later. How could he do this to me? I thought we were happy. I had given him everything, my trust, my loyalty, my heart. But no matter how angry I was, I still didn't have all the answers. And I needed them. I needed to know the truth, to understand why this had happened. So, after a few days, I finally texted him, telling him we needed to talk. He agreed, and we set a time to meet at a coffee shop near our house. When I arrived, he was already sitting at a table, looking tense. I could barely look at him. I didn't know what to say. The silence between us was suffocating. Finally, he spoke. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you, he began. But I've been seeing her for the last 6 months. I didn't know how to tell you. I was scared of losing you. I know that sounds terrible, but I thought I could juggle both lives. I thought I could have everything. Everything. That was the word that stung the most. He wanted everything. He wanted me, and he wanted her. And somehow, he thought he could have it all without anyone getting hurt. I couldn't hold back anymore. I stood up and walked away. I didn't want to hear his excuses, his apologies, his explanations. I just wanted to get as far away from him as possible. The days that followed felt like I was walking through a fog. I kept replaying that scene over and over in my mind, the woman on his lap, the way he looked when he saw me standing there. I questioned every conversation we had, every glance, every quiet moment. I took a few days off work to process everything. I couldn't concentrate, and the weight of the betrayal seemed to follow me wherever I went. My mind would wander during the most mundane tasks, washing the dishes, folding laundry, even taking a shower. My thoughts kept returning to him, to her. Who was she? Why did he choose her over me? Was it something I had done wrong? Had I failed him somehow? The worst part was the waiting. I needed answers, but when I asked him for them, he wouldn't give me a straight response. I texted him, demanding more details. He finally admitted that it had been more than just a fling, that it was an emotional affair too. He had started confiding in her, something he hadn't done with me in months. I felt betrayed all over again. How could he have let it go this far? How could he have involved someone else in the very intimacy we once shared? One evening, about a week after our coffee shop conversation, he called. It was the first time he had reached out to me since that day, and I wasn't sure what to expect. I agreed to meet him at a park, a neutral place. When I saw him, he looked different. His usual confident, charming demeanor was gone. He was pale, his eyes hollow, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. My anger flared up again, but I tried to contain it. This wasn't just about the betrayal anymore, it was about understanding why he had chosen to hurt me like this. I never meant for any of this to happen, he started, his voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't looking for someone else. It just happened. She was there when I needed someone. I've been distant from you for a long time, and I think I don't know. I didn't want to face what I was feeling, so I turned to her. I wanted to shout at him, to tell him how selfish and cowardly that was. But instead, I just listened. I had to. Because despite everything, a small part of me was still trying to make sense of it. I don't know why I didn't come to you, he continued. I think I was afraid of facing the truth. I didn't know how to fix what was broken between us. I didn't know what to say. What was broken between us? I repeated, barely able to believe it. Was he saying that our marriage had been broken this whole time and I hadn't even realized it? Yes, he admitted, looking away. We'd stopped connecting. I was still going through the motions, but I wasn't fully there. I wasn't present for you. And I think that's when I started drifting. I could feel the knot in my stomach tighten. He was admitting that it was his fault, but it didn't make it hurt any less. I was so angry, but I couldn't help the flood of emotions that came rushing in. I didn't know if I should feel sympathy for him or if I should just walk away and never look back. But why her? I finally asked, my voice trembling. Why did you pick her of all people? Why not come to me and talk to me about what was wrong? He paused for a long time, his eyes filled with regret. I don't know. I guess I thought it was easier to talk to someone who wasn't involved. She was an escape. She was easy. She didn't have the same expectations, the same history. That hit me like a ton of bricks. She was easy. Those words hung in the air like a poison. It felt like he had stripped away any remaining respect I had for him in that moment. I don't know what to do with this, I said quietly. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. His face fell, and for the first time in our conversation, I saw a hint of desperation in his eyes. I don't expect you to forgive me right now. But please, don't throw everything away. I want to fix this. I want us to fix this. Fix this. How could we fix something that was so broken? How could I look at him the same way after everything? Every time I closed my eyes, I could see her face. Every time I remembered the last few months of our marriage, I realized how much of it had been a lie. The days following that meeting were a blur of confusion, anger, and heartbreak. I didn't know what I wanted, if I wanted him back or if I should just walk away for good. I had so many questions. Why had he kept this a secret for so long? Why had he thought he could keep both me and her in his life? I decided to take a break. I needed time and space away from him. I couldn't make any decisions while I was still in the midst of all these emotions. But as the days stretched on, I found myself thinking about him less and less. I stayed with my best friend for a while, and I started focusing on myself. I reconnected with old hobbies, started going to therapy, and spent more time with the people who truly cared about me. I slowly began to realize that I didn't need him to feel whole again. But the hardest part? The hardest part was coming to terms with the fact that our marriage had never been what I thought it was. I had to accept that our foundation was cracked long before the affair, and the infidelity was just the final, painful revelation of what had been broken all along. It's been several months now, and I'm still processing everything. I don't have all the answers, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to completely forgive him. But what I do know is that I am stronger than I ever thought possible. I've learned that my worth isn't tied to someone else's actions. As for my husband, we're still in contact, but our relationship will never be the same. He's apologized over and over, and he's trying to make things right, but I don't know if I can ever go back to who we were. I've realized that I deserve more than someone who could betray my trust so deeply. And even though it hurts, I'm learning to love myself again. I'm taking it one day at a time. And maybe one day, I'll be able to look back and find peace with this chapter of my life. But for now, I'm just focused on moving forward.